Welcome to the Soul Signal podcast with Danielle and Veronica. Tune in and remember.
We're here to talk about you.
Oh my God. You know what? I get so tired of talking about myself. The story's always the same pretty much. And it and in fact, like I told Veronica when we first talked, I very rarely ever go back and listen to a TV show, a podcast, a radio show, anything that I've done because I know what I said, big deal, and I know what I look like. Good God, so I don't usually do it. But in any case,
Had listened to a few previous podcasts and did some research on your long-term journey. But if you're interested, I know you would love to talk about yourself again.
oh yeah,
Can
oh
you
yeah.
give us just like a basic run through for the guests, I guess? Who are you and what is your Pleiadian origin?
Well, actually, let's start in the very beginning of it, like the incarnation part.
The wow stage, baby stage, huh? Well, um, and we can tell the people, of course, that I am Tygetan Pleiadean. I am an ET. I am what we call an avatar. And so I explain to people the best way for them to understand what the avatar is, of course, is to watch the movies, The Avatar. And that's really a lot of movies have been created to explain to people and tell people the truth about many things. And so there is all the information there, but of course it's made in Hollywood. And it's all about the magic, blah blah. But you have to be able to read between the lines, and there's far more truth in them than anyone knows. But in order uh, for the people to not have to deal with the karmic flashback on themselves. That would be, of course, the regressives that are controlling, as well as those that are on the top tier of humanity that are also under control. They have to do it. They present the information so they can say, okay, we're free, we've given them information. But if you don't get it, that's not our problem. So they're free of the karmic flashback problem. But most people just look at it as entertainment.
Yeah.
So then I will cite various movies as we go along for certain things that people should look at or can look at again, perhaps with different eyes. Now, in my case, as I said, I am an avatar, so can remember the fellow getting into the machine or the pod, and then his mind and so forth is transferred into another body. So on one of the ships or at home on my planet Era, I am in a pod, and it's called an immersion pod. And I have been transferred into a physical human form so that I could stay here and work for long periods of time. In my natural form, we can visit. We wear a frequency belt or a frequency device to adjust our frequency or to encase ourselves in a bubble, if you will, of higher frequency because we are typically 5D and above. And that's not dimension, that's density. So our frequencies are much higher. So we can't stay here for any length of time. For a certain amount of time, a few hours, 4 hours or so, but we can't eat or drink the water directly, and vice versa. I can go to the ship for a short period of time, but I can't eat or drink the water or anything that would kill me or kill them. So there have been adjustments made, and but in that case, uh, being that I am an avatar, the story basically begins with I trained on my planet and on the ship with other people, other crew, to come to Earth, basically as a part of a vanguard group, if you will, in the 50s. to come in and try and help humanity to prepare for what we're going through right now. And so I did all of that and the preparation and everything, and I remember very distinctly the time had come for us, a few of us, to leave the ship and to enter into the physical form. Now, these arrangements are made between a man and a woman, or a husband and a wife, or different things, for babies to be born, and we enter at that point. So that arrangement, I guess, had been made in my case. And so everybody's going out the door, kind of like a paratrooper jumping with a parachute, if you will. And at the last moment, I changed my mind. I said, no, 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 I can't go. I can't go. I was terrified. And they're like, oh, no, you've made the plans. You've got to go. We're going to push you out the door, you know. So they're pushing me out the door. And it's like, oh, my God, what have I got myself into? So then the next thing, of course, is I wake up and realize I'm in a physical form. I'm in a baby's form. And I was born to a couple that were not married or anything like that. And so it, was the usual 3-minute process to make a baby kind of thing. And there I was. After a short time, I was approximately 3 months old. I was left on a doorstep and at Catholic Charities in Cleveland. And I was adopted later on. And there's a long story about the adoption and all that kind of stuff. But my mother and father that raised me, the family that raised me, they were some folks from Tennessee and so forth, rooted there. And my mother was 20 years old. I think my dad was 21. And they wanted to have children really badly, but my mother had problems. And she had to have an early hysterectomy. So she had adhesions and all kinds of problems, and they really truly wanted a child. And my dad told me, he says, well, we went to the Catholic Charities to see about adoption. And he said, we looked at saw a bunch of different babies and so forth. He said, but he said, we saw you. He says, I picked you up and I looked at you and you kind of smiled at me. And he says, the next thing I know, you threw up on my shoulder. And he says, well, that's the one. And so they took me as their child. And when you go through this process, most people come in, they don't know that they're a starseed.
Right.
I came with full memory on purpose. And that means that even as a baby, my mind was full of everything that I knew, where I came from, and everything I know up to now, even and beyond.
Yeah.
The difficult part of it is that you have this knowledge, but you don't necessarily know what it means. So as I grew, as I changed and became a child and into my teens and so forth, all these things, I would have an experience and I would go, oh, so that's what that means. Oh, that's what that is. So you grow into the knowledge and the experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, so my whole life has been that way. And seeing ETs or seeing craft was a normal daily thing for me since I was a little child. I can remember one particular instance. I was, I don't know, probably about 7 years old, somewhere between 7 and 9. You get older and you forget things. And I was outside in the yard, and at that time, children had chores, okay?
Mhm.
And we would take out the trash, or we might wash the dishes, or in my case, both of those, as well as they had those old rotary type push mowers, and the blades would roll around kind of things in the front. And my father had one of those, and I was out in the yard kind of pushing the thing, trying to get some grass cut. And I remember, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and there were practically no clouds or anything in the sky. And I had this funny feeling, and I looked up, and there were four ships, four saucers above me. And I looked up and I said, "Oh, cool." And I went back to pushing the mower. I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And so I continued doing what I was doing. And if I would move, they would move. And if I would stop, they would stop, and that went on for some time. But, and I kind of knew instinctively they were like family, so then just checking in, watching over, whatever. But that went on my entire life. So,
I do have a question for you, Dale.
yes, huh?
So I know you talked about you were born with all your memories and you knew, everything from the very beginning. Now, what can you tell us about star seeds that are here that don't remember? Like, is that part of like their contracts that they
Yes,
signed up for?
yes.
Hmm.
Generally is part of their contract. Like in my case, I came in with full knowledge on purpose. The
Right.
only thing that I chose not to remember was whether or not I was married or had children or anything like that. And we had all agreed that that would be the best way for me to do it because if I missed them so terribly, which would probably happen, that could interfere with the mission that I had. But they said the knowledge and things that you need, no problem. So I took all of that. But most star seeds come in with a veil,
Right.
and they may have some inkling or feelings that they know something is different or something is off, or that they realize when they look at a certain star constellation or different things, it kind of gives them an inkling. Me, I always used to look at the Pleiades. I'd lay on the side of the hill at we had a big plantation in Tennessee. And I'd lay there and look at the stars and the Pleiades, and I'd just go home, home. I knew, and but most people don't do that, but they do have a connection. They do have a feeling.
Yeah.
Some don't ever until they are triggered in some fashion. An
Yeah.
event, a trigger, something, a smell, a person, something happening, even some traumatic things can happen. And all of a sudden, these memories may flood back to some degree. So every person has their own contract and their own setup that they wish to follow. But in my case, I didn't come necessarily to have children or to be married or to do all of the so-called normal things. I came with a mission, and that mission was foremost to me. So that was mostly where I concentrated my efforts. But there are plenty of people that come in as star seeds from various races. To my knowledge, there were never that many of the Tygetan Pleiadeans. There were only a few of us that ever came within a period of, say, 1,000 years. And so there were only a few of us ever here at any one time. And I am kind of connected to Goja from Cosmic Agency,
Yeah.
uh, and we're kind of partners in crime, if you will.
Mhm.
Uh, we became very close friends, and that is how I actually, through her, met my family again on
Mhm.
the ships and so forth. And they verified all my information for me, and everything I knew matched everything with theirs. And they were kind of amazed, they said, because in most cases, nobody remembers as much as I had.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thrilled with that. But my favorite numbers, my favorite colors, my service numbers, the ships that I was on, all the various things, I knew all of that, and they confirmed all of that for me. So that was a really that was an explosive day, really.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, and so many things happened from there on. I've had so many contacts, so many. I've even been abducted a few times, which I did not like.
So
And
let's backtrack. So when you've had contact with them, is it a physical experience or is it like
it can be both. Yes,
telepathically?
it's telepathic and it's physical.
Mhm.
I've had physical experiences and I've had the telepathic experiences. And we used to communicate via computer. They were allowed to use the same type of technology that we have. They couldn't use anything more advanced than what we have in
Right.
order to not break the various laws or the things that. So they would use the computers, and we would talk on the computers. We've talked on phones. We've talked on all kinds of various devices, and most of the time They would not use their direct voice, but
Mm.
over a period of time, it didn't matter. We got to know them and they got to know us so well. They would play games with us.
Really?
And yeah, they would come on and we would listen to them and they'd say, "Well, we're not going to tell you who we are, but we're going to talk and then you can decide if you know who we are." And we would very rarely ever miss who they were. And it wasn't by the sound of the voice because they would always disguise the voice.
Oh,
We got to know them that intimately, and so that went on for about 7 years. And at this point in time, we're not in direct contact any longer, and we
what
don't.
about telepathically? Can you still communicate with them that way?
I always knew I go outside quite often and I call for the ships, and I don't always, they don't are necessarily the ones that come, but I've had all kinds of ships come.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had many people who sit out with me and I'll call for the ships and the ships will come and they see them and they're like, "Oh my God," So it's a life-altering experience because at that point in time, you look at things and you go, "My God, I have to change my mindset." I realize that we're not alone because it changes you that much.
Yeah.
Most people can handle it. The people on the ships always know who can handle it and who cannot. I've actually stood in groups where I've had 6 to 8 people around me, and only 3 or 4 people could see the ships, and the others could not.
Mm.
And they will block people from not seeing them if they feel that it would harm them in any way, change their perceptions too much, make them crazy, that kind of thing. So they're very, very careful about things that they do, and that goes for most races. There are a few races that are not benevolent, and most of them, unfortunately, are. So, anyway, that's how the story began. That's how I kind of came in and to do what I've done.
My question is, you've had this connection with the Pleiadians and you've communicated with them. Now, your specific mission to help humanity, can you explain a little bit more of how you're here to help uplift humanity in what way?
Well, what I would say, and I'll give you the entire thing of this, is that I came in and as a young child, of course, I was able to do things that most people could not. I could hear people's thoughts. I knew what they were thinking. I scared everybody around me to death. Children were scared to play with me at school, and they always, I was always by myself because they knew I was different. They called me weird and all kinds of things, and it was difficult to deal with. But I had to be trained essentially by various masters on how to block the thoughts and things because it was like listening to 1,000 radio stations at one time. It would make you nuts.
Mm.
And you have to learn how to deal with those kind of things. I'm extremely empathic. I feel everything other people feel, even at large distances. And I'm very, very connected to nature, to earth, to plants and trees and animals. Very, very connected to that kind of stuff. I have what I would call it an exceptional relationship with Mother Earth, like the indigenous people did. And there are many times when I go out and the clouds or things are there, and I'll ask Mother Earth, "Would you please move your clouds for a while so I can talk to my family?" And the clouds will just go and disappear. And so, and she's been pretty upset lately. So there's been a lot of weather and different things going on, and I don't blame her. I can tell you the truth. But in any case, yeah. So um, that kind of stuff would happen quite often. But uh,
Your
kind of lost,
mission.
kind of lost my place there. I've got so many things going through my head. It's like, oh my God.
Felt that. I felt that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. So, with all these different abilities and so forth, it has taken quite a while for people to get used to me. And I make no bones about it. I don't run around and tell every person I meet, "Hey, I'm an ET, I'm an ET." I used to wear a model of a ship that I made.
Yeah.
I cast out of gold, and I used to wear that constantly. And I wore it on purpose so that people would see it and they'd look at that and go, "Is that a UFO?" And I'd say, "Yep." And they'd say, wow, and that would open them up for a conversation that they hadn't experienced because otherwise they wouldn't talk to people. And
Mm.
so that was part of that mission. But really, the whole mission as I came in was I always was into science and technology and all that kind of stuff. So at a very early age, at 5 years of age, 6 years of age, I was repairing all the wash machines and televisions and things in the neighborhood for everybody. At 6 years old, I had a 8 foot Tesla coil that I built in my family's basement. I turned into my laboratory, and I would have these huge lightning bolts flashing around. I think I drove my poor mother crazy. At the age of six, around 6 and a half, I built my first laser,
Oh,
which was a ruby laser. And my father worked for General Motors Terex division. That was an earth moving division, kind of like Caterpillar. And he obtained from Union Carbide a ruby boule that they had grown. And so it's just a raw lump of ruby. And he got that for me. And I took that and went to the local lapidary shop in our little town there, Northfield, and I ground it into what looked like a cylinder, a cigarette cylinder. And then I had the ends polished. I polished the ends and everything on it. I sent it away and I had the ends silvered. And then I built the rest of the laser with a flash tube that I made and put it in a cardboard paper tube. It was like a toilet paper tube, but it actually worked, and it produced what at the time we used to call them Gillettes because everybody wanted to punch holes in Gillette razor blades.
yeah.
Okay. And so it would put a good pit in one, but it wasn't powerful enough to get through the whole thing. So I still have that. And then later on, around 9 or so years of age, I built a helium neon laser and won some different science awards and everything at the school and things with that. So it was an interesting beginning, but my goal was always to be another Nikola Tesla, whom I feel was one of the most brilliant scientists that ever lived. And I would have given anything, I would have paid anybody anything to work with him. And he's only now coming into his own where people realize just how important the man really was. Unfortunately, he died just a little before I came in, so I never got to know him or meet him. But I wanted to be another one. And I really wanted to do something in a big way to just expand humanity, to open their minds and to bring them new technology, new abilities, this and that. And, so one thing led to another. But unfortunately, that quite had never quite happened. And there were various reasons for it along the way. Of course, life gets in the way of different things, and schooling and so forth. And so it never really happened.
Mhm.
And I was kind of sad about that. And one day I was talking with my family, and we are Tygetan Pleiadeans, by the way, not just Pleiadians. There's about a dozen races of Pleiadian.
Right. I definitely understand that there are
Yeah,
many
yeah, I
different.
want people to understand that difference. So I speak from that point only. I can't tell you what the other Palladians are necessarily doing.
Understood.
Okay, but in that case, um, they told me, they said, well, Dale, you shouldn't be so unhappy with what you've achieved. They said, you have achieved far more than you know because just your being, your high energy, your high frequency affects many people around you, even if you don't know them. They said, so simply by being who you are helping to raise the frequency of humanity and the earth. And I said, well, I guess I said, okay, I understand. It made me feel a little better, but I still felt like I had failed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really how I wanted to do things. But they said, and it's probably better that I didn't become another Nikola Tesla because if I had, they probably would have taken me out and
Right.
wiped. And as you know, at this time, a lot of people are disappearing. So,
I'm seeing that constantly right now with what's happening. I know someone recently passed away too. What was his name? Uh,
David Wilcock.
yes.
And my friend, I knew David, I knew Nick Pope very well, and he passed away. And I knew Eric Van Daniken, and he passed away. So Eric left in February, and Nick left 2 weeks ago, and David left a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Oh, I've also been given information that millions will be leaving.
I I feel that too.
Yeah.
Danielle, you want to say something?
No, no. Yeah, I agree with you. Millions will be leaving. And there's a lot of different things out there that are pointing in that direction. There's a lot of garbage on YouTube. Most of it's, clickbait stuff, and it's so hard to
Right.
to wade through it. But there are some things that are pretty good if you find them.
Yeah.
I've never been one for channeling. My family and I, uh, in the very, very beginning, oh, let's see, they tried the channeling routine, but they found that it was kind of unreliable because channelers invariably put their own flavor on things, put their own personality into things where they get certain things wrong. And they kind of didn't want to do it that way because it didn't always get the message through intact.
Right.
And so there were very, very few of those, and they stopped doing it. And then later on, they went to direct contact.
Mm.
And so the contact, they tried with others, didn't work out so well. And then they connected with Gosia and myself, who are both Tygetan Pleiadean.
Mm.
And
The the lady in Switzerland,
I'm sorry, honey.
that woman in Switzerland.
Yes, uh-huh.
Hmm.
She's
For
Tygetan
our
Pleiadean.
viewers who don't know her backstory as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Her name is Gosia. uh, and she runs the Cosmic Agency channel. There's tons and tons of information there. There's over 1,000 videos I know with her, with them, with me, and all kinds of things. So I highly recommend that people take a look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We talked about everything. There were times when we would spend 4 or 5 hours a day talking.
Yeah.
But it was detrimental to them because even them being connected to us as high a frequency as we are, it's
Mhm.
still too low for them, and it caused a lot of problems.
Mm.
Uh, Eventually, it killed two of my sisters, Swaru number 9 and Annika of Temer. Both
Mhm.
died from too much exposure to the lower frequencies.
And
So
is that why you spoke up once about in a previous interview about contact going silent? Is
yeah,
that why?
that's
Because
partly why, yes.
there were
It's
issues.
just too taxing on them. I have to say on their behalf that they're so innocent and they're so, um, how would I put it, along with innocence, the naive, if you will. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. They're so pure and so high in thought and feeling. They trust everyone and trust everything. And so many people tried to take advantage of them or did, and they got hurt in the process. So
Mm.
it's a whole different thing for them to look at humanity from their point of view versus our point of view. And as you both know, things here are not what they seem, and people often have agendas that are far different than what they present. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's very dangerous, and so many of them were hurt or taken ill. Even my brother Dor, DK, was harmed, got sick, and they attempted to kill uh, at the time Queen Alanum, and she almost died, but she spent more than 6 months in not only a dry med pod but a wet med pod as well. And then Marie came in and took the place of Alanum. But there were lots of things that happened that transpired along the way.
Yeah.
Yes, your question.
Oh, so I just had a question, and this has always been in the back of my mind,
Mhm.
is when they die, I mean, obviously what does that look like? What does the transition look like, or how does that work when extra or a race dies?
Well, in our terms, the physical body, if we're in a 5D physical, we can live between 12 and 1500 Earth years. Okay, so we tend to live quite a long period of time. We don't necessarily just die.
Mhm.
What happens is that we finally get to a point where that physical reality no longer serves us and we need to move on, so we just simply leave.
Right.
And the physical body dissolves and we go on to do another particular thing or higher thing. There is no death,
Yeah.
not for anyone or anything. But unfortunately, here we've been taught wrong from day one about everything.
Hmm.
And all of our schooling, most of it is conspiracy and garbage. And so much truth has been kept from people that, everybody is so terrified of the idea of death. So when they die, they transcend, they leave the physical body. The physical body is a vehicle that simply just dissolves away and they go on. So I know that both of the ones that died that I mentioned, I know that they're still there in spirit or otherwise, and I still can talk with them or send them my feelings and information. But they can choose at any time to reincarnate into a physical form, if you will, or to adopt a physical form, and they can do that whenever they will. So we often hope that they will return and that we'll hear from them. But I was exceptionally close to them, as was Gosha. So it was very, very hard for us when they left. But they had the physical platform that they had chosen had been contaminated too badly, and
Right.
they simply had to leave. So, but we look at that as a death or that they were murdered or this or that, and not necessarily. There have been murders and different things. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that my family has said to me and that I say to others is they always tell me this, well, you want to come home or this and that, want to be back on the ship or you want to serve or, you got to remember the grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence. And I said, well, I know that, but I feel at some points that I could do more from there than I'm doing here at this point in time. This physical body is going through a lot of difficulty. And yes, I've had lots of nasty comments and various videos that I've done, and my size got out of control. I was only contracted to be here about 40 years, okay? And at the end of that contract, I had the opportunity to go home. And they came and asked, "Do you want to leave?" And I said, "Well, I had kind of fallen in love with the planet and with the people." And I said, I'd kind of like to stay and serve. What a dumb mistake that was. But
Oh,
in any case, they told me, they said, well, you are going to start to suffer very badly with what is known as frequency dissonance syndrome. And that means that the frequency of myself is far too high for this physical body. It will start causing a lot of problems, and it has, and it is. And there is just no medical help. Nothing works. I wish it did, but it doesn't. For some reason, nothing helps me. So I began to get very physically ill. I was forced to retire early. I worked for NASA and Honeywell Aerospace, and I had to retire early. I own two companies of my own, high-tech companies, and I do everything all at the same time. And so my physical capabilities have been limited. I gained a lot of excess weight and a result of what happens to your physical body, in our case. I am working very hard to deal with it, but there will come a time when I'll no longer be able to deal with it. And so my wife has known since the very beginning who I am and what I am. But she's a beautiful Chinese woman, and it's a wonderful love story and the whole thing, which I won't waste your time with. But she is Buddhist and not necessarily what you call a real practicing Buddhist, but she's very Zen about life. And she has seen more ships than you can imagine. And, she is just, she amazes me, And I'll give you a quick story that you can keep or no. It's entirely up to you. But it was around 2017, and we were getting ready to go out to dinner for our anniversary. And our anniversary was on Friday, and I think it turned out that we had to go on Sunday. But even though she's pure Chinese, and I went to China to marry her there and then brought her home and married her again, uh, she loves Olive Garden. So we were getting ready to go to Olive Garden, and at the side of our house, between the houses in our neighborhood, and the drive and everything, I have a clock on the wall just as I go out. I'm kind of a clock looker, you know. I always like to know what time it is, supposedly, even though there's no such thing as time,
That's
the,
right.
the relevance. And I looked at the clock, and it was about 5:45, as I recall. And there's a couple of steps. You go out the side door, and the car's parked there on the drive. And so she's already down, standing in front of the car, and I'm coming out. I'm getting ready to lock up the doors and everything behind me. And whenever the ships are around, I can always hear them. I hear telepathically or otherwise. And I stopped at the top of the step, and I told my wife, I said, "They're here." And she looked at me and says, "What?" I said, "They're here." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The ships." And there was one puffy cotton cloud here and maybe one little one over here and a perfect blue sky otherwise. And pardon me, at the moment, the hassles of having a mustache. At the moment, I looked up, and then if you can imagine having a pea pod and squeezing it so that each bean would pop out one at a time, right above my head, ships started coming out of the blue. And it was one ship, two ship, three ships, five ships popped out of the blue, and they were sitting right over us. And I'm freaking out in my mind. I'm talking to them. I'm floating on cloud nine. I must be 3 feet off the ground. And my wife looks up and she says, "Oh, look at that. Okay, let's go. I'm hungry." I said, "What?" You're seeing something that very few people ever get to see. And she says, so we get to dinner, and I ask her, I said, "Honey, doesn't anything like that ever excite you or bother you?" And she says, "What's to get excited about?" She says, "The universe is a big place, life is everywhere. So what?" You know, and that's the way she put it.
Yeah.
So the
It's
ships
on
land in the
her.
backyard, and they come to the door, knock on the door. She'll answer the door. She says, "Just a minute, I'll get Dale." And that's the way it is with her. So,
Mhm.
she, unfortunately, so she's not as excited about all that stuff as I am, but she understands it. So,
Yeah.
little side story that's kind of fun.
She's so used to it now, huh? She's just like,
Yeah,
hold on a minute.
it's no big deal to her at all. I get blown away by all of it. And I've seen every kind of ship that you can think of, physical, non-physical, balls of light, triangles, cylinders, saucers, you name it. And you would think I have plenty of pictures. I have some. They used to follow us wherever we would go. I would go home to Tennessee to my family. I'd sit out in the yard and they'd come there. And I would go to China many times to see the wonderful family that I adopted there, that actually they adopted me. And we were at the ocean and everything, and a ship came right there in front of us. And my wife was taking pictures, and she didn't even realize it. And she's taking pictures with the UFO in, and I'm sitting there talking to it. And, so I have things like that. And so there have been many that have come across, and I've been lucky to get a picture or two. But you're so blown away, so in awe at the time, you don't think about taking your phone or your telephone or your camera or whatever and taking pictures. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
So sometimes those opportunities go away.
Yeah. I've had my fair share of seeing some ships too in the sky
I'll
all the
bet. I'll bet. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have, well, I think at nighttime I did see a couple of them. And then I think before I met you or even heard about you, I
Uh-huh.
I sent Danielle a picture of this bright star. I was on my lunch break and this bright star was moving across the sky, and it wasn't a plane, it wasn't anything, it just looked like a bright star. And I'm
Right.
like looking at it and I'm like, okay. And and so I told Danielle, I got to record like a little clip of it. I'm like, I think I just saw a ship right now. And I
Uh-huh.
sent her a video of it, and I was like, because I'm not allowed to record back there where I work, and so
Oh,
I saw
That's so,
it and yeah, it came to me. So it was kind of weird. And then after you popped on my For You page, so I don't know if it had a correlation to that, but I did see a bright star ship, look like a big star,
yeah.
bright.
A lot of times they appear as real bright stars or orbs or whatever, if you will. And
Hmm.
and it depends. The ships themselves are not always necessarily present, but they are in orbit all the time.
Hmm.
And we've had our ships in orbit. There have been anywhere from one to four or five ships in orbit since 1952.
Right.
And but the ships will send out little drones. All right, and these little drones, they can be the size of a baseball to up to a beach ball size. And
Mhm.
their energy is so high around the ship, they cause the air to ionize, and therefore it looks like a white ball or a star or plasma.
Yeah.
That's actually what it is. It's the plasma around the ship from the high energy. And so people see those quite often. So they might send out as much as 1,000 drones anywhere around the planet. So the ship always has eyes and ears on everything, even though they're stationary or in a particular orbit. So
Oh.
that's quite common, and people see those a lot these days.
Yes,
Uh,
and it disappeared out of nowhere. It was so bright that it went across the sky. And then as soon as I saw it, I acknowledged it and I kind of smiled. I was like, okay. And then I saw it just boop,
yep,
disappear, gone.
they pop out and they're gone. And you
Yeah,
can always tell the difference between that and a Starlink satellite or, all the various things,
right.
and I often teach people or train people how to tell the difference,
Mhm.
especially when you talk to them or you use various means to communicate. And, when they flash back at you or they do various things, darn well it's not a satellite because they don't do that,
I
And
will I
yeah,
will say something.
yeah,
They do pop off like in Sedona. When I went to Sedona, I think I told you about this experience, is that they were popping their lights off at me like boom, 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 boom,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, yes, I was seeing these ships, like they're acknowledging me, but I also felt in my heart, like my heart was exploding. I had like this loving feeling inside of my body when I was like
Mhm.
looking up at it, where I could not explain it to you. It was just like my heart chakra was just like popping out, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, you connect with it, And
Yeah.
if they're the friendly species, which most of them are,
Hmm.
there's about four different races here that are not benevolent to us. I have had contact with them. I don't want any further contact with them.
Right.
I love everyone, and I tell them I love you, but I prefer to love you from a distance.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to
Uh,
go into that. I do want to ask you about that experience if you're open to talk about it.
which one?
The not so good, but
Oh,
being
okay.
dead.
Well, whenever, like Stephen Greer, for example, has his CE5 protocol and all that stuff. I teach people how to contact ships, and it takes 5 minutes. It's no big deal. You don't need all kinds of protocol. And I'm happy that he is doing the work that he's doing,
Mhm.
but it's not necessary in most cases.
Can you give us a little insight on how one would connect with a positive being ship?
Okay, I tell people quite simply when you go outside and at night, and they can come at any time of day or night, but they typically like later in the evening, anywhere between 11 and 3 in the morning. So I'm always out there, maybe very late, and it's calm, quieter, that kind of thing. It's the witching hour, so to speak. But I will typically, I look at all the different areas of the sky, but for those beginning, choose an area of the sky that's kind of void of stars, like an area that's a little darker than others, and simply put your thoughts out there and say, I'm open to contact. I would love to speak with you. I'd love to see you. I'm prepared for it. I think I can handle it and that kind of thing. And what they reward is an open heart and persistence. Okay. They don't come to do dog and pony shows. That's not their way. But they will make contact with those that are sincere and that really desire that kind of a contact. So after a period of time, you may not get it the first night, or you may not get it after a week of nights, but persistence pays. And after you keep doing it enough, when they see that you're sincere, that you're persistent, that you truly desire contact, what happens is that they'll begin usually with what I call a flash bulb. And if you remember the old days when they had those photo flashes and they had a bulb in them and it would go flash and blind you, of course. Well, they'll do that in that dark area, and all of a sudden you'll see this bright flash, and it really gets your attention because it is bright and it's apparent. And then you go, oh, okay, hello, I'm here, I'm ready to talk. And they may reward you with another flash or two, or they may actually light up very brightly, and sit there, and you can talk with them and ask for various responses or things like that. But they'll only do so much for your first or second time. But
Mm.
that's how it begins. And after a while, you'll notice when you go out, you may get a flash here, you may get a flash there, a ship may light up here, one may light up there, and they light up super bright and they'll move across. And then after you're talking, and after a while, they'll say, okay, we've got to go. And then they slowly fade out, or they may just go boom and gone. And, but satellites and things don't do that, and they don't leave trails, so they're not meteors or anything, that kind of thing. You always can tell the difference in a ship, and you will feel it as well if you're in tune with that.
Yeah.
And so once you get used to it and they know that it's not going to freak you out, then you make more and more contact. And so I've taught many, many people to do that. I do a little meditation, as it were. I relax and I go through a routine, excuse me, whereby I call on various ET races, and that may be a dozen or more. And I call out those races that I know or believe are kind, compassionate, they're loving, they're here to help, and they have no intentions of harm, okay? And so I call out to those particular races.
Mhm.
And I ask them, I say, I identify myself. I'm Dale. I'm Tygetan Pleiadean. I'm stationed here on Earth, etc. So other people can say, well, I'm just so and so, but I'm really interested in contact. So you make it as simple as possible, very relaxed, very calm, and proceed in that fashion. But what I didn't know in the beginning when I started this was be careful what you ask for because you may get it. There was a time or two in my life when I was pretty, how would I put it, pretty fed up with things, okay? And I wanted off of this mud ball in the worst fashion, so I'm calling out and saying, I want to get off this mud ball, come down here and pick me up. Well, that left it wide open for anybody to come. And then I had some experiences with grays, and I had some experiences with reptilian and other races, and they would abduct people, and they may not do some nice things to you.
Mm.
So I've been through all of that. I've had implants. I have a few now. I have scars left from other implants that were removed and so forth. But at the time, I didn't realize that you have to specifically say what you're looking for, what you want. And during that little meditation process, calling out the good ones and so forth, I define exactly what I want. And then I say to the others, I say, well, I call out those races and I say, but you and you and you and you, and if you want the names, I will give you what I say. But um,
Sure.
I tell them, well, in my own personal, and this is strictly my opinion, okay?
Yeah.
And some of these races, there are some good ones. But so I will say, as far as the reptilians or the Greys or the Draco, the ruling class of the reptilian, they would just as soon eat you as to talk to you. And then the insectoids or the mantids, they have been difficult to deal with, all right? So, as I said, again, that's my opinion. Some people have had very good experiences. And I tell them point blank, I said, look, I know some of you are good. However, I don't have the time to sit around and try and sort this out. So I'm going to be bad and say, I don't particularly want contact with you folks right now. However, I do love you, I do respect you, but I prefer to do it from a distance. So please don't come and take me and do things to me.
Right.
So you have to say exactly what you want. And after doing that, you are then usually okay. And you have to remember to invoke your protection, your higher self, the white light of the universe, etc., whatever you believe in. You make your invocations. In my case, I am protected by my family. They keep track of me every minute, and they do it by frequency. So I will say to you that higher races will track people by their frequency because every particle, everything in the universe that exists has its own specific frequency.
Yeah.
Now, you can track whatever you want with that frequency. In fact, that's how our star drives work, how we travel. We'll get into that at another point. But by tracking by frequency, the lesser races, less advanced technologically, tend to implant. And that's where you get all these implantations and so forth and so on. And I'm not too crazy about having my body messed with unless I've given permission. You know what I mean? So you always have to say, hey, I do not consent. I don't give permission for that kind of a thing. And protect yourself. And that generally will do just fine because people ask me, they say, well, you're sitting out there all the time. You're alone. Aren't you ever afraid? I said, no, I never feel fear. I have skunks. I have every kind of animal because we live in the national park. Every kind of animal you can think, from bucks and deer to the only thing I haven't seen is bears. But foxes, everything. They'll come right up to me. They'll walk between my legs and everything. I'll say, hi, how are you? And they'll go about doing their business. And it's never any problem as long as they know if you're going to harm them or not. There's a communication between you. Everyone can do this. I
Right.
communicate with trees and flowers. I raise bonsai. I've been doing it, the little miniature trees in the pots. I've been doing it for 55 years. Trees and flowers speak to you when you are ready to listen. My wife and I raise rare orchids in the house, and they're very easy to take care of. Most people say, oh, we can't raise these, or no, you got to do this and this. You don't have to do nothing. We water them once a week, and we don't put ice cubes in them. Nobody wants an ice cube in their bucket. Now, would you like somebody to pick you up and stick you in a bucket of ice? Come on. Silliness. We put them in a bucket of water. We let them sit for 1 hour, and that's once a week. We put them in a south-facing window with dappled sunlight and shade, and they're happy as clams. And all we do is love them, and they reward us with beautiful blooms constantly. So, it's a very, very simple thing, and it's all about opening up and connecting to the world at large.
I think
Because,
that's very important for us right now,
yes,
especially in this time that we're in right now.
very, very much so. Every square inch, every square millimeter of this planet is alive, and the planet itself is alive. All stars, all planets are living beings. And the sooner that people come to grips with that and understand it, the quicker they're going to have, all the different results that they hope for in their lives. So it's a very, very important thing. But there are plenty of times when I'll walk by one of my trees or all the trees, and one will say, I'm having a good day today. Or another one will tell me, I'm thirsty. Another one might say, I'm not feeling so good. And you can hear them and you can converse with them.
Mm.
People say, oh, what are you, a tree hugger? I say, yes, I am.
Yeah.
Every single tree on this planet communicates with every other tree on this planet by their root system.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. The indigenous people knew that, and that's why they lived in harmony with Mother Nature. So, it's so easy to do. I
Mhm.
know everybody these days is eat, sleep, and work, eat, sleep, and work. They're stuck in the Babylonian magic money system, and they don't have time to think about anything except their bills and their problems and their kids and paying for college and all that kind of stuff. It's designed that way, everybody. It's designed that way to keep you wound up with negative energy all the time. And if you look at where we are in the world today, that's exactly what happens. We go from one calamity to another before the other one's even finished, just to keep it rolling. You don't have any good news on television. Everything is bad. That's what we emphasize, everything negative. You've
Mm.
got to sit down, relax, clear your mind of all of that stuff, and realize it's just there to wind me up and chill. And that's all it is. So, and that's why so many people are leaving at this point. The Earth is splitting. It is dividing into two Earths. There'll be the 3D Earth and there'll be the 5D Earth. And a lot of the people are choosing to leave and go to the 5D.
Yeah.
So,
That makes a lot of sense, and that ties back into all the disappearances, all the deaths, and everything that's happening right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's some really nasty stuff, some foul things going on right now.
Hmm.
And
And
there's some good things.
yeah, and I also think that maybe it's also has to do with like control too, of like the the narrative, the people that are in control, are
Absolutely.
also playing a role in uh what is the word? Um,
The
dismantling
agenda.
people, like yeah, like taking people out.
Yes, they are. They're in their last hurrah, so to speak. They are
Mhm.
doing everything in their power. They're pulling out all the stops. They're throwing everything at us to see if they can win, but that's not going to happen.
Right,
My family nor others are not going to allow that. Um,
right. I also did want to go in, and I know there are like other beings too working to not let that happen too. And I wanted to go into talking about what you had mentioned was oh my God, I'm going blank right now.
that's okay. Take your time.
Um, what did we talk about? Um,
Maybe Danielle can help.
yeah,
Yeah, we edit these, so don't you
yeah,
worry. You take all the time you need.
yeah,
I
I
have
am
a
Oh,
gonna,
101 questions. Like
yes.
in regards to the crafts that fly around, I wanted to comment. We sometimes think that they would be loud or that they would have sound, and I've been pretty close to a couple, I want to say, aircrafts or spacecrafts in my timeline. I was born on a military base, an
Hmm.
air naval base, in
Hmm.
my whole life. I have always believed they've really been close to me, my family, and maybe even like done testings. You had said like chips, like some of the species are working with humans together, collecting data and adding chips into people. There's a lot of spiritual practitioners doing like energetic, like psychic surgeries and removing these implants or these vibrational um, resonance implants. And so I wanted to try to expand a little bit on that, maybe signs or things that might show you're in contact or have been in contact with something you might not want to be. And maybe in
Hmm.
a sovereign way at this point, how can we recollect ourselves to make better choices?
I'm not sure I quite understand what your question is. Um, as far as making the better choices, those, like I said, that have been uninformed or that are not aware that they do have a choice, that they can protect themselves. There are cases like where one time, not that long ago, just a few years back, actually, I woke up and I don't sleep very well at night because of obvious reasons. And so sometimes it's very late into the morning, 4, 5, 6 o'clock before I even get to bed. I have to wear myself out to try and sleep. But this particular night, I had gone away, and I say gone away. When I went to sleep, I was gone for 3 hours and 56 minutes. Okay. And when I woke up, I was kind of groggy or whatever. And I looked down at my left leg, and just above my knee, a few inches above, there was a perfect right triangle carved into my leg. And it was blood red, and at least an eighth of an inch deep. It did not hurt. It did not bleed or anything at all whatsoever, but it was there and it wasn't there before. And it was really, really strange. And I said, well, that means I've been somewhere. Something's gone on. I didn't have any memory or any flashes or anything of that nature. But after a little while, a few days, and this thing kind of started to heal over, I would rub my hand across it, and there was something sharp there, like the end of a needle, and it would prick my hand. And so I began to dig around. I got my scalpel and I began to dig around and I dug an implant out of that triangle. And I put it in a little vial, glass vial, medical vial, and it was dry at the time. But before I did that, I went to a friend's house who we had a lot of different equipment. They had a medical microscope there, and we took pictures of the device, and it was this crystalline looking form with all kinds of colors on it, and it had what looked like hairs hanging off of it or wires for whatever. And so I took many pictures of that. Case, I put it into the vial and I set it aside. Well, I noticed in a few days that it kind of dried up and curled up and it just turned into practically a white looking blob. And then the thought occurred to me that if I cut myself at any particular point, if I took a drop of my blood and some pure water and put it in this vial, I wanted to see what would happen. Well, I did that, and this thing immediately reopened, and all the wires and everything came back out. Okay, so I have it that way at this point in time. And, so things like that do happen. I don't always have flashbacks or recalls or whatever. They do a pretty good job of wiping out that kind of stuff. And so, you have to be kind of prepared for those things. I didn't ask for any. I asked my family about it, and they said that at the point that that one had occurred, they said that they felt it was the gardeners. Now, the gardeners are everybody who's seen the movie E.T. All right, E.T. is a form of a gray, but they're called the gardeners, and their purpose is to watch over plants, animals, and star seeds. All right, and they may have come and visit me for whatever particular reason because I was hurting and in physical shape difficulty or whatever, and they felt that that was who had uh, been to see me at that time.
Mm.
So, those kind of things do happen, and I've had lots of them over my lifetime.
And have you managed to get each and every one out?
No, no, no.
Okay. I remember my question now.
Okay, there you go.
My question was, I was going to ask you about, I know we spoke briefly about disclosure. What do you know, or what can you tell the viewers about disclosure and what that's going to look like in the near future?
Well, my information and my feelings and so forth, which I combine, and I'll tell you which is which, is that at this point in time, we are very, very close to having direct contact. Now, I have worked for the government. I have top secret clearances for the government, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
but I know that they're not going to come forward and tell you the truth. They're
Mhm.
giving you these little drips and little feeds right now going on, and it's all based on naturally the negative stuff and, protecting their airspace and whether or not we're hostile and all this kind of baloney.
Mhm.
I look at it this way. If you do nothing but look at hostile abduction cases, that's what you're going to come away with, a negative flavor. But nobody ever talks about the good stuff, really, and they do their best to keep that hidden. So
Say it all, Dale. Say it
uh,
all.
say it all. Yeah. Um, the people the ETs there, well, my one time my sister Swaru told me, she says, if you could see through the window of the craft and I'm looking at Earth and everything around her right now, she said it looks like a parking lot up here. Okay, there are that many craft around Earth, but
Yeah.
they maintain their cloaks or their invisibility shields or different things like that. Some of them do and some of them don't. But the people that are seeing the things, either they've trained themselves not to see them, like astronomers, or they've been informed you absolutely do not say what you have seen. You ignore it, so there's always something going on, always people around, and that kind of thing. You've got to realize that there is not a moment that they're not watching or looking out for us. Okay, so I asked them point blank at one point in time. I said, well, we'll get into that. It's another story. I'm getting off the track here. But more back on, um, I've got too many things going through my head.
No, no worries.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's like, wow, because you should start to open up these doors and everything just, you know.
Floods in.
But
You said at a point in time they had told you, um, I think you were talking about what disclosure looked like a parking lot from their
What
point.
disclosure would look like? Yes. All right, the government's never going to come forward. They're not going to give us that. They're only doing this drip feed thing.
Mhm.
However, I think that the ETs that are here, the various people that are watching, they finally gotten to the point where they realize humanity is never going to pull out of this tailspin, not
Mhm.
by themselves. We're going to need a little help. They
Mhm.
can do things, and they do often do things, but they often disguise it. They make it look like it's something that the humans did and not their intervention. They don't want people to just see them as their intervention. But they've gotten to the point now where they've said, look, enough is enough. And they're going to make direct contact, and there will be several races. They're going to be the races that look more like humans, more like my family. The Tygetans and the Pleiadians are more human-like. In fact, we're related. We share DNA. And that's part of the reason why my family is here. But then we have 12-strand DNA, not just two. But
Mhm.
in any case, they are at the point where they're going to make direct contact. And so it will be the races that people can actually look at without being freaked out and all that kind of stuff in the very beginning. My information, I've been told, and what I've seen is that this will happen from now on into 2027, perhaps a little beyond, but the initial has already started. Certain people are being contacted directly, and so it is going to happen, and they're going to force the issue because the government's not.
Yeah.
I have asked them point blank, would you suppose we got crazy? Or well, let's say, suppose a few people got crazy and decided to start another nuclear war. I said, would you step in and stop it? They said that if it's a limited kind of thing, they're not going to bother. All right. They don't like to interfere in human affairs.
Right.
However, if it gets to the point to where it's going to endanger the planet, then they will step in and stop it. And they'll take out the nukes, they'll take out everything. The reason being is because people here do not realize that this planet, this solar system, our sun, is connected to all the others. And there is a balance and a maintaining of frequency and connection between all of them. These are all living beings and all living systems. So what happens to one happens to all. Our sun, for example, Sol, is connected to the main star in the Pleiades, which is Alcyone. And Alcyone is the sister star of Sol. So what happens here happens there, and that's 440.1 light years away. So there is a great deal of connection in the universe, and that's what people have to realize. So they're not going to allow anything to damage the planet. If we want to wipe each other out, they're probably not going to interfere with that either because that's our choice. And they do follow what is known as the prime directive. All right, everybody yells at me and goes, that's from Star Trek. And, the prime directive and all these different things and the Federation of Planets or the Galactic Federation. Well, the truth is, people, that my family and others have given George Lucas and all the other people that made these particular movies, they gave them Gene Roddenberry, they gave them this information on purpose. All right, they would sit in on a lot of different councils and meetings. And they got this information and they said, we want you to use these words because we need a way to be able to communicate with you and with humanity that they understand. And so they've given them this information on purpose. We didn't steal it from you. Okay. Uh, but there is a prime directive. And my family has been one of those that really is a stickler about following it. And I keep yelling at them. I said, look, enough is enough already. We're all suffering down here. Come on, let's go.
Mm.
And so they've finally had enough baloney, and weapons grade baloney, I call it. And I borrowed that. But nonetheless, it just got to come to an end, and that's where it's at right now. That's where we're headed. Okay, so we're waiting for that particular thing to happen. Now, if people want to check on where this information is coming from, if they don't have direct contact or anything like that, if you do look at YouTube, as I said, I'm not one for channeling much. However, I have found that there are a couple that are pretty spot on, and they tend to, even though they don't talk to each other, they tend to support each other's information. And one of those is Bashar, and the other one is Dolores Cannon, who unfortunately is no longer with us physically, but she's still there. And their information, along with a few others, is really giving, the truth to all of this stuff. And they will tell you point blank, yes, they're expecting direct contact also within this time frame. So we're just on the verge, right on the very edge between now and into 2027. Something big is going to happen. And that's also part of the reason why so many people are leaving and disappearing and so forth. So, I know it, I can feel it. I don't even have to be told by anybody, but, it's, and I would say probably 95% of the people out there can feel it in their own hearts and their own stomachs. Something big is brewing. Okay. But when you look at all the things that are happening in this world right now, it is unbelievable. I as a joke, I made a list, okay, and I was sending it to some of my friends, and at the end of the list, I said, "Geez, did I miss anything?" Well, there was over a dozen things on there, and these are all factual things. There was only one of them that had to do with anything that would be considered or construed as religious. And even after I made the list, I kind of went, "Oh my God," because there's just so much. And I can share that list with you as well, but that's just, again, things that I pulled out, and I even missed a few.
Yeah.
So I have a question in regards to like reincarnation, the idea of avatars, and you had stated earlier in the beginning of this that there's only two every 1,000 years. Do you think we're getting to a place where higher dimensional consciousness is wanting to embody or ground on Earth again after this process, after this age of Aquarius and everybody's enlightenment and everything growing? Do you think there's going to be more of use happening?
I think there is a great deal of star seeds or ETs here now already, and they are in the preparation process. I think what's going to happen is that eventually, after all of this comes out, the technologies are going to change tremendously. We will have free energy. We will have med beds and med pods, and there will be an eradication of big businesses that control a lot of things, and turn it into a money-making process. I don't know that I'm allowed to say those names, but most of you people probably can figure where that's all coming from. So they're fighting back. They're part of the regressive. But once that happens, there's a very good chance that, and what they're hoping for, is that Earth will become a holographic society, much as my planet Era, or Temur, or Dakota, and various other planets in our system. In which case, people say, well, it sounds like communism, but it's not. It's more or less where everyone has a purpose, everyone contributes. There is no money or monetary systems. Everybody does what they want to do. You can change your mind at any time as long as you're contributing to the overall whole. And so everybody depends on everybody else. There is no wealth, no status as far as middle class, lower class, upper class. We don't have any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
And
believe that's more the direction of 5D. People just kind of
exactly,
expressing and
that's
experiencing what the ecosystem needs and not
that's
the
exactly what
individual
we're hoping
want.
for, Danielle. That's exactly what we're hoping for. Earth will
Mhm.
then evolve to the point where it will take its place amongst all the rest of the people out there, all the rest of the planets and everything. At this point in time, we're pretty much under control. We're not necessarily a prison planet, but we are quarantined. All right. And we are definitely under control. And so
Limited.
Yes,
Limited.
limited. Oh, yes, we are. Absolutely. That can all change when humanity finally gets to the point where they've said, look, we've had enough. We're tired of being lemmings. We're tired of lining up in the line and jumping off the cliff one at a time. He's dead, Jim. He's dead, Jim. Come on. Enough is enough. Um, so it begins when we say it begins. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are going to go, oh, come on. I tell everybody every day, I'm tired of this, I'm tired of that. Well, hey, that's the wrong thing to say. Because when you say you're tired of something, what happens? You become tired.
You give up.
You've got to change your way of thinking such that you say what you want, not what you are not wanting. If I tell you don't think about a pink elephant, the first thing you think about is a pink elephant. So stop thinking about what you don't want, start thinking about and concentrating on what you do want, and live your life as if you already have it. When you do that, you will change everything around you, and you will influence others around you without even having to say a word. You do so simply by changing your frequency. So raising our frequency is accomplished in that fashion. And so, I mean, there are people in very horrific stages of diseases and problems. Everywhere you turn these days, there's cancer, cancer, cancer. Used to be heart problems, now it's cancer. There's something, every time you turn on the television, there's a new drug. It's just overwhelmingly negative. You've got to stop looking at that stuff and realize that it's all there to program you.
Absolutely. I think we can heal ourselves in the most part, right? Where if you really tap into that part of yourself and really believe, because it all has to
Yes.
do with your belief systems, um, you can heal yourself. We have amazing abilities within ourselves that we haven't really unlocked as human beings on this planet, right?
We are creators.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, we get into the religious thing. People always ask me about God and how do we believe in this and that. And, my family in general, and just for rounded numbers, we're about 850,000 years in advance of humanity. And people say, well, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in God? Do you believe in these kind of things? And I would never, ever put down anyone for their beliefs or what they currently understand. That is not for me to do or to judge. But what I tell them is that we simply look at the universe as a creative system, a creative energy, a creative whole. It's not a man, it's not a woman, it's not this, it's not that. However, we will say that after studying it a great deal, that we have found that that particular creative energy does resemble more of a feminine energy than it does a masculine energy, and the female being the creative side. So, and our planet, for example, on Era, I mean, it's mostly like it's pretty close to 65% women, and so the guys are kind of valued actually, and that makes me feel pretty good, but nonetheless, but so yeah, it's a question of realizing, and people, well, when they ask me, do I believe in that? I said, well, I tell them that what we kind of believe, which I just explained. I said, as far as is there Jesus, is there God, is there this, is there that? I said, why don't you wait about 800,000 years and ask me that question again? You need to be in the same frame of mind, same frame of view to understand what it is that we're trying to tell one another. So it becomes that kind of a thing. You'll find, I think, well, I've traveled the world a great deal, and I did it on my own, and it was caused out of an adversity, if you will. I was raised as a staunch Catholic. I was um, uh, and very involved in the church and so forth. And I had an experience that I won't bother going into, but um, something with a priest, and it forced me to leave the Catholic Church. And as I did so, even though it was traumatic, I began to travel the world and look at other religions. And what I found after going everywhere, didn't matter if I could speak the language, I could always understand people no matter where I went. And we could always communicate because I talked or I thought with my heart, not my head. And people are people wherever you go. We all put our pants on the same way. We all eat the same way. We all live and love the same way. There's not that much difference between people. It is a political system that divides us and teaches us that, oh, so and so is this and so is that, and this one's this color and this one's that color. That has nothing to do with anything. We're all human beings on this planet, and that is our first and foremost lesson, to learn how to, pardon me, to learn how to live and love, to learn how to live and love one another. And we really don't have any business being out among the stars until we learn to cherish one another and cherish life. Because
Well,
there are places on this planet where life is worthless and doesn't mean a thing to some of these people. That has got to stop. Absolutely got to stop. And we have done this to ourselves. And I point that out by saying every child that is born, every child that has been born, when I was born, all of us, you, me, doesn't matter. We are from the moment we're born, we are taught to compete with our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our families, and you go to school and you've got to do better than the next one, and you've got to have a higher score, and it's competition, competition, competition. We always have to win over the next guy. Now, that has created such a divide among people. What if from the moment we were born that we were all taught that every person matters and every person is equal and that we did everything we could to support one another? What kind of a change would we see in this world?
we'd have a different society. We would not be.
Totally different society. And that's the way our worlds work. Okay, so no one is left behind, even though that's a quotation. No one is left behind. Everyone is valuable. Everyone contributes. And your dreams and your desires are honored. In my group of family and beings, I am an architect. I am a starship pilot. I have served on many ships. Also a ship engineer designer. I design and build ships. Those are things that I'm a time traveler. I'm a sand clock pilot, like my sisters before me. And so I've done all those different kind of things. But if I wake up there and the next day and decide, well, I want to be an artist or a painter, that's what I would do. And nobody's going to question it, and nobody's going, well, you got to pay the bills. There is none of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Each person follows their own dreams and their own heart. They are allowed to live and experience. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is a whole different way of looking at things, and that's what this world has got to get out of. We've got to start understanding that every life is valuable.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a bug, a tree, a plant, a person, every life matters. When we do that, we'll transform the entire planet in a very short time. So Mother Earth is pretty ticked off right now, and I don't blame her because they've been messing with the weather on purpose with the HARP machines. There's three of them in the world. One is in Alaska, there's one in Europe, and there's one, I believe, in Africa. And they're constantly messing with stuff. These are weapons. And
Yeah.
not only that, we've also changed the climate with other problems, other issues. And of course, they keep telling us, no, there's no climate issues, no climate issues. We just went through one of the worst winters ever here in Ohio. So, yeah, there's no issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to the how the Pleiadians live and more higher frequency beings live. Um, I had a question that I've always wondered about, and so I know that there were higher higher civilizations that lived before us, right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Hmm.
there's been many civilizations on this planet.
Hmm. But like that were more high tech, and more like in tuned and
Yes,
uh-huh. And so would you say that um we are the goal here is to try to reach those same awarenesses as those other civilizations?
yes,
Hmm.
yes, definitely. The awareness is the key. At this point in time, I'd say humanity has been blocked from awareness. We have no awareness. We
Right.
are only doing what we are demanded of, what we are forced to do every day. There's no awareness in it.
Mm.
90% of the people with a job hate the jobs they're doing. And most people feel unappreciated, undervalued. It's strictly negative.
Mm.
And as David Wilcock and as Jordan Maxwell and others, my friends used to say, it's a loosh farm.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Excuse me.
We can't step into a higher dimension until we access our free will first. A lot of us are just blindly taking whatever's being fed to us.
Precisely, Danielle.
Mm.
Precisely. Yeah, we need to take charge of ourselves. Okay. And I know there's a lot of people out there that may be listening or will listen, and they'll say, well, that's really nice, Dale, but that ain't going to happen, or hey, I've got
It
to
is.
worry about feeding my kids, or I've got to worry about this, or my car is broken, or I don't have $1 to buy food, or, I understand. But that can all change because it's the way that we look at our situations, the way that we feel about our lives. And if we constantly dwell on being negative and poor, that's what we're going to be. If we constantly, and people are going to say, well, I've tried, I've changed my mind, I've done this, I've done that. I said, no, you didn't believe it. You told yourself that. You didn't believe yourself. You've
Hmm.
got to literally stop the merry-go-round, put the brakes on, and I've stopped. And you've got to say, from this point forward, I'm going to live as I desire to live, as I am. And so every day, every morning, every time I say to myself, I am as I am, and that's all I need to be,
Mm.
period.
Yeah.
Okay. So it really is frame of mind, but the frame of mind has been taken away from most of us. Our freedoms, our thoughts, our even religions. We're told who we are going to grow up and what our religion is, but nobody gets the choice. And if they do make a choice and it's against the family, oh God help them. So yeah, there is no free will. And you've got to change that. And it starts with each one of us.
And we
And
have the
there are plenty
ability
of
to do that.
times when there are people around us, driving down the road. Road rage is rampant these days. I'm telling you, that's where I see a lot of the worst of humanity come out. Everybody thinks they're more important than the next guy. It really doesn't matter, all of it. It's just an illusion. This is the Matrix.
Yeah. It really
That's
is.
another great movie to reference.
So red pill or blue pill, here you go.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, I know during your time here, you've built quite a resume. What can you say about some of the most exciting memories you have, or some of the things maybe you weren't able to speak out on and would really like to bring up?
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, I did have quite a resume. Nobody would believe it. If I wrote, and I've been asked to write my book or a bio, and I refused because I just never believed in writing the books or making CDs or, touting myself as a UFO person or whatever. Everything I do is free. Every lecture, every appearance, it's all free, or I give the money back, I give it to charity, what have you. The information my family has given me and that I'm giving is free. No one has to believe it. They can take from it what they will. That's okay. I don't want anyone to just follow blindly. They need to think for themselves, and that's the whole point. As far as, um, damn it, I do this to
The ex-
myself every
the
time.
exciting parts that you worked on in the
Oh,
past or things
okay.
you want to
All
speak
right.
on.
Well, as I said, I did work for NASA. I did work for Honeywell Aerospace. I've worked on the space shuttle. I was trained on it, all that stuff. I wanted to be an astronaut, but unfortunately, I never got to go. I told them at the end, I said, why don't you just tape me on the nose cone and let me go, And they said, no, you just mess up the rocket. So, I never got to do that. But I loved what I did. I had a good time with it. I had some difficult times. I was in launch control when we lost the Challenger. I knew what happened entirely. I know the entire backstory that most people don't. And those are some horrific things. And when we lost Columbia, so those are some tragedies that were needless and could have been entirely avoided. Um, as far as people ask me all the time, well, my son wants to be kind of like you and study lasers, or he wants to do this, or she wants to do that. And, what can you recommend? I can tell you, I have more degrees than a damn thermometer. All right. And they don't mean anything, really. Um, it, I have been driven to learn and to understand my entire life, and I still am. Even though my physical body is a little difficult sometimes, I have challenges, but I still am as active as I can possibly be. I still run the two companies, and I still have loads and loads of different hobbies and things that I enjoy and clubs that I belong to. And most of it is designed to impart knowledge or to help wherever I can. And that's the best part of it for me. So, but as far as amassing a huge resume or all that kind of stuff, it really doesn't make any difference as far as I've found, and geez, I probably learned more mathematics than Einstein. And at this point in time, I probably couldn't calculate my way out of a paper bag. So it's if you're going to use it or otherwise, I probably got to be the world's only rocket scientist that gets lost backing out of the driveway. So
That's funny.
but it's true. It's all relative, and uh, it's all about what you want to do that makes you happy. And if you're lucky, a lot of times, sometimes people will have the jobs that they enjoy and they may have a hobby. And if they're lucky, their hobby is their job. Okay. But that's very, very few people along the way. So, it's all about what makes you happy and what you can do that will contribute to other people. So everything that I still do and enjoy doing is designed to contribute to others. So,
Yeah.
because that's where I get my most happiness, trying to share the thoughts and the information and the things that I've seen and experienced. It could take a lifetime. And even if I did write a book, nobody'd believe it. I wouldn't believe it. It's been that amazing of a life. So I could never complain and say, no, my life has not been valuable. Oh, it's been difficult. Believe me, there have been times. But everybody has that. And from those things, you either learn and grow or you allow them to take you out. Um, and like I said, we've lost a couple important people in the last few months from UFOs. My personal feelings is that the only one that may have been of natural causes was Eric Van Daniken. He was 89 years old. Wonderful dude, wonderful man. As far as uh, David Wilcock and Nick Pope, I don't believe those were natural.
All right. I don't think so either, especially them talking always on record that they would never take their life or harm themselves. So,
Yeah. And he did that live stream just a couple hours before they found him. So I was just,
Yeah, no, there's just no way.
Mm.
Nick Pope died at 60 from a very aggressive cancer, and there wasn't any show you could go to or otherwise that Nick Pope wasn't in. And he was the voice of UFOs for everybody. Yeah, I didn't always agree with him. He didn't always agree with me, but I respected him for who and what he was. And David, same thing. But it just doesn't make any sense. And whether now Nick may have indeed passed, but I'm not quite certain whether or not that David Wilcock has passed. There's no real proof yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of
Um,
strange. And then we've got a dozen different scientists, engineers, and people, men and women, that have just gone disappearing. And there's a
disappearing.
lot of other ones that they haven't mentioned.
yes. Well, there's
And
also
that's
based
the
on,
bigger thing.
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
The
You,
bigger thing, I think, is them not bringing up everyone who's gone missing.
no,
And that,
absolutely
I
not.
think, is just the biggest connection. Why aren't you bringing it up?
Yes, like David Paulides studying the 411 stuff all the time. People are going missing all the time. And people do not realize that over 1 million people a year disappear from the United States alone.
Poof,
Yeah.
out of thin air.
So there is definitely something going on.
Yeah.
Uh, and there has been a lot of information alluding to the fact that we are currently in a war with an aggressive ET species.
Yes, we will. Yes, I agree. And I think because I was just watching a video yesterday about a lady who discovered something about anti-gravity. She was like a scientist. I don't remember her name, but she also was deleted, I guess we'll say, um, because she was so close to uh, telling everyone. She had a university where she was going to teach people
Right.
about anti-gravity.
She had the answers, and it was time to take her out.
Yeah, yeah,
Because she was going to share the answers.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
There's this, yeah, go
sorry, I did want to circle back to, would you reincarnate again, Dale? What is your thoughts on
under the current
reincarnating?
conditions, absolutely not.
No.
Under the current conditions, no way, no way. However,
Yeah.
if we did become a holographic society and they could use my help, I would come back, but not under the current conditions. No, 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 no.
I think a lot of
I'm
us feel
sorry,
that
I've done the
way.
best I could while I was here, but that's
Yeah.
it. You know, let
Mhm.
somebody else carry the flag for a while.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
And
it's
I,
going to change. It will change very, very soon. So,
yes,
I tell everybody, keep your eyes open, keep looking, keep understanding, keep watching, keep hoping, okay, for the change, for the better.
yeah,
And be aware also that things like the false flag operation for UFO, what do they call it? UFO invasion or that kind of thing, that the false
yes,
flag, uh,
right. The
Project
fake
Bluebeam.
invasion coming.
Yeah, Project Bluebeam and all that kind of stuff.
Do you
When
want to
you
expand on
are,
that?
pardon
Hmm.
me?
Yeah, please, can you expand on that?
Yeah, Project Bluebeam is designed, of course, as a false flag to have UFO projections and all different kinds of things, and military aircraft and so forth to come in and actually act as if an ET race is going to invade the Earth and take over. And the whole point of it is to try and scare humanity to the point that they don't want anything to do with ETs, that we're all bad, we're all demons, we're all bad news. And that's what Bluebeam's ultimate goal would be. However, if you are advanced enough in your thinking, in your contact, in your dealing spiritually and otherwise, you've opened up and you've become aware, I believe you will know the difference. Okay. So that is the one thing that I stress for everyone at this point. Do your best to open up, to wake up, to understand the truth of what's really going on. And so you'll know the difference, of what's really happening. It's like all the drones that were in New Jersey and all that kind of stuff. They, there were some ET drones involved in that, some even from my own family. But the reason they were there is because they were interested in watching what was going on. They weren't part of the project. It was all more or less a military thing to get people all wound up,
Mm-hmm.
so it had really nothing to do with invasion or anything like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
there's just around every nook, every cranny, every corner, there is something there designed to keep you crazy.
Yeah.
And so you've got to open your eyes and look, read between the lines, look between the rocks. It's just that simple. Uh, you know, you can't walk around with a totally negative view every minute and believe that everything is out to get you or everything is a conspiracy, but there are a lot of things that are.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the conspiracies are real. And that's just, the way that it goes.
Hmm. And I think my other question that I had was, I know that there are more um, ET races that walk among us that look. I don't, maybe you can open our awareness more to that. More ETs that look human that walk among us, right?
Hmm. Yes, the Tygetan Pleiadeans, or at most of the Pleiadian races, which are of Lyrian descent and migrated to the Pleiades, they are all very much human looking. All right. I mean, we can stand beside one another. I can stand beside my brothers and sisters, and you cannot tell the difference as far as human looks. However, I will state for the fact is that they're a whole lot nicer looking than I am. The women are beautiful, the men are masculine and handsome in their natural forms. Okay. And so they can even come in their natural form and still walk around and look, wonderful. And you can stand by them and you'll often feel something is different. The energy is different. You get that feeling this person is really unique, or this woman or this guy, they're really handsome or really beautiful or whatever. And they'll look at you with these penetrating eyes, and it's almost like, wait a minute, they're saying something. I can that kind of, so you will know under certain circumstances, but there are far more visiting than anybody realizes. And they're the Arcturians and the Syrians and different ones, the Andromedans and so forth. And they are slightly different looking. They are still, of course, bipedal and humanoid looking. They have some differences, but they can also wear clothing or cloaks or different things that will still allow them to walk among the average person and nobody will notice. I mean, these days, I doubt whether or not you could walk down a street in New York, you could be having an elephant walk behind you. I don't even think anybody would notice.
Yeah,
It's that
I was
kind of
gonna
thing.
say there's a lot of androgynous dressers or people who are non-binary, like
Yeah,
just presenting themselves. We are approaching more of an alien perspective where it doesn't have to be a certain
exactly.
way. Hmm.
Exactly. I mean, you look at Japan and the differences in the way that the people dress in the society and everything there. Some of the women like to dress like baby girls and all these different things that they do. And nobody either you don't notice or you just accept it as perfectly normal. I could probably walk down the street with my regular skin on and nobody would even notice. It's like, uh,
I think that's part of disclosure at on the human
yeah,
perspective. I think there's a lot of things we are pushing in society to see if we can be okay with something that's not so like systematic.
yeah, absolutely. There's every form of life that you can imagine out there. I will say that the humanoid or the 5-point star system of physical bodies is pretty much a universal thing, but there are actually ET races that exist that do not have physical forms that we would be familiar with.
Mm.
And in fact, if anybody has even seen the show that used to be on called Orville, which was a spoof on Star Trek and everything, there was a gelatinous form that was on that starship. And so they're all different kinds of life forms. And they come from all different kinds of planets and atmospheres and temperatures. And there's some that live in high temperature and some that live in extreme cold and all different kinds of things. So it's part of that is also going to be learning the tolerance of that.
Mm.
Okay. If what if a being were made of pure what we would call fire? but they're still an elemental, they're still a living being. You've got to be able to be tolerant of that. And once you get, even myself, I say, well, ETs of various races, they don't bother me. But if one were to walk up to me while I'm sitting outside waiting for a ship or something, it might shock me at first. You never know exactly how you're going to act. But then I would quickly acclimate and realize, oh, okay, and no big deal. So in Star Trek, Star Wars, those kinds of shows, they were all designed to teach us about that. It's not just, especially in Star Trek. Star Trek was not designed to just have a bunch of crazy people running around in makeup and suits looking like ETs. Star Trek was a parody, was about human condition. All right. It was about humans and our life here. And if you look at those shows in that fashion, you will see that with ease. The same with Star Wars. And what you're seeing is type 2 and type 3 or type, civilizations. And we're unfortunately a type 0 civilization. We still get all of our energy from dead plants. So, we're not up and not way up there on the scale yet, but we're working on it
Yes,
if we have the time.
yes,
Yes,
yet we are trying. We are
we're trying.
trying.
Yes, we are trying. We are
Yeah.
trying. Yes. And
Yeah.
we would advance very, very much quicker if we get to the point, where we have the holographic society and that kind of thing. Because then the blinders will be taken off.
Mm.
And
That's
people,
something I wanted to express, that I believe a lot of the galactic support or our galactic teams, they're here to help us because we've been very slow in our evolutionary process, or that we haven't been able to jump past those hurdles or over those things that we just quite can't concept yet.
yes and no. I'll agree with you on that. Yes, in that you're correct as far as human nature, and no, as far as look how far we've come in the last 100 or even 200 years in evolution. And humanity is a very, very young species.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, we are, like I said, essentially type 0 on the Kardashev scale. And, so we've got a long way to go there. But even in the last 100 years, we've gone from practically horse and buggy to unbelievable technology. Where would humanity be in another 100 years if we're permitted to wake up, realize our potential? I mean, when you look at humanity overall, there are some magnificent things that humans do. We have art and music and different aspects of the human soul that are just amazing. And even my family, they collect what we consider garbage. They collect, like, they have an old violin, they have a grand piano on the ship. Okay, and they collect various forms of the women love the makeup and things that people use here for women. They love the clothing. They're women. They enjoy that stuff, shoes, the whole thing. And the men, we have certain sports and they love bicycles. They think bicycles are the coolest thing on the planet. And we look at it and go, oh, wait a minute, I'd rather have one of those anti-gravity speeders like in Star Wars, and they think this stuff is really cool. So it's just a matter of perception. And,
Mm-hmm. They
but I can remember many, many times talking with them about that kind of stuff, and they would get such a kick out of it. Yeah, even things that we would throw away like garbage, bottles and various things, or bottle caps, or what have you. They would collect that kind of stuff and think fabulous things, or paintings, they were amazed.
Mm.
And like I said, they're also a little naive too, because they take everything at face value. If you tell them this is my name and this is who I am, they believe you.
Yeah.
They have no reason not to.
Right.
And I've always been the kind of person that I start someone off at 100% trust, and I let them work their way down. Okay, I
Mm.
don't force you to earn my trust,
Right.
and so that can be a fallacy as well. And I've been burned many times. And my wife often yells at me for that. She says, "You're too trusting. You trust too
Oh.
many people." And I said, "Well, that's my nature, you know." And so she's always the one that keeps my feet on the ground because otherwise I'm gonna float away, you know. And so she's practical,
I love that.
very
I love that.
very
And
good
maybe,
at it
and maybe that's why she came into your life to keep you
to keep
grounded.
me grounded. Absolutely. She's
Um,
one of the most wonderful people I've ever known. I am truly rewarded,
yeah.
and she's she considers herself not very smart. And she
Oh,
has a degree and speaks 5 languages, and she says, "Well, I'm not very smart." And then she very rarely talks when we go anywhere or anything unless someone talks to her. And she says, "Well, I'm afraid to open my mouth. Somebody will think I'm stupid." I said, "What?" Yeah. It's
okay,
just,
Dale.
yes.
I did want you to kind of, before we end this, I kind of want you to talk about your website and like what, your offerings and what you I know you talked briefly that you make lasers and speakers, but where can people find you and know more about you through your web?
Uh, I have no like website or anything for YouTube or anything like that.
Mhm.
I have a few good friends who have offered to help me to set up a website and try and expound on what I know and to try and help people to look at things. But I haven't taken that opportunity at this point. I'm just too busy,
Mhm.
and also dealing with certain challenges. But
Yeah.
as far as my businesses go, I have the laser company, I have the speaker company. I believe you've seen those, or you have
Yes.
uh, okay.
Yeah,
A
we'll link
lot,
it down below.
yeah, a lot of people tend to reach out to me through those email channels and so forth. And some of the more brave ones will try and call me, and if I'm busy, I can't talk. But and
See?
that's okay. I have an office here at my home. I have an office at the shops and the different things. So I'm constantly doing something with that. I have, on occasion, received up to 1,000 emails. I am one being. I simply cannot answer everything. I would love to talk with each person individually. Sometimes I'll do my best to just try and respond and say, "Thank you so much. I know I appreciate your writing to me." Everybody wants to meet my family. Everybody wants to talk to them and this and that. And I can tell you point blank that even I can't do that at this point in time. They're not in communication with any of us directly any longer. And we keep hoping every day. My greatest hope is that when all the stuff comes down and they start showing themselves, is that I will be allowed to do what I came to do, which would be either to act as an ambassador or a liaison between them and humanity. That would be my greatest gift. So I hope for that. As far as, introducing them or telling them things or sending them information, it's just not possible. They have absolutely cut off all of that at this point in time. That's not to say that someday it'll happen again, but even when we did have direct contact, we were just thousands of people, and that is okay because that tells me that people are interested. People want to know, and that's good. But they have to understand that myself or even my family and crew on the ship, which at the time was the Toleka, uh, there's only so many of us, and there's only so many that can even speak English. There's a particular team or group of people that have been trained in Spanish and English so that they can communicate, but not all. And the closest thing to our language, believe it or not, is Navajo.
Oh,
Because we have had early contact with the Navajo Nation,
yes.
but that is the closest thing to our native language. Of course, in most of the case, we don't speak. We use telepathic,
Yeah.
and telepathic is, you get 1,000 pictures instead of 1,000 words instantly, and there are no secrets.
Mhm.
So, and that takes a lot of learning how to control one's thoughts and what is appropriate and what is not. But that's the way that they usually contact me. If someday I decide to try a YouTube channel or something, I have one. I don't even know what to do with it. Um, I just never have bothered with any of that stuff. I don't want to fight with them over things that I can say and things I can't say, names
Mhm.
that I can use and I can't, or the monetization of channels. I can even tell you that with Gosha, everybody said, oh, she must make a ton of money. She very rarely made enough money with her channels to even pay for her rent, let alone anything else. And she contributed a lot to various aspects of our cause. So that's just not the case with us.
Right.
Like in my case, I simply don't. I don't want the money. I don't want anything from anyone
Mhm.
except that you listen and either accept it or don't. No, no, you don't have to follow. It's okay, and that's good. I want people to think for themselves.
Yeah. And I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your information, and that's kind of part of what me and her want to do is kind of just bring out that information, and this may help a handful of people that are going to be listening back to this, and you might never know, they might have that memory come back or something,
Sure.
and so that's why we're doing this and we're here, and I appreciate you being here today with us. And Danielle, if you want to say anything, I'll leave it open to you.
Always happy to help. I've been thrilled meeting both of you and contributing. I'm sorry it's been a little jumpy. We've been jumping around a little bit today. I don't usually do anything scripted. I speak off the top of my head. If I'm led, with a particular program with questions and things, then generally okay. But sometimes, like, I get so many things going through my head that I want to say or didn't say or what have you. I can even forget, which I've done a few times already today, and you get lost in it. It's like, I'm here to get information from you, and I want to learn as much as I can, and you want to learn as much as you can, and then we get all wound up and we don't know what we said. And so, I hope people understand that. I don't know how long your show runs. You said you were able to edit, and
Yes.
you can edit out the corny moments or not,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
as long as we make people laugh and have a good time,
Yeah.
that
It's really grounding for us. And I hope a lot
awesome.
of our listeners as well, because there really is a disconnect from humanity that we all really need to try to plug back into. And it's going to
Truly.
come from the individual intention first, and then the group can follow. And so
Yeah.
it's really nice to hear someone, dare I say, has been preaching this for a long time, because we've picked it right up. We picked it right up where you left it. And I don't want anyone to think that there's been a miss or a gap in any of this energetic hold, because I really do think it is the community that's going to bring this full circle. And we all have to do this. Every single one of us, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your environment, and pay attention to the energies that you're playing with. Because if your life isn't thriving, there's obviously a choice that needs to change. And it
Yeah.
will reflect within yourself and how you're living life. And so I think it was no coincidence that Veronica found you, and that I really think it's important for your message to get out. And I know what you have to say and how you've lived your life is an important, dare I say, like testament to human.
I really do try to live what I preach. Absolutely. You know, like in taking care of Mother Earth and all that stuff. I can literally say I've never once littered in my entire life, and I honor her in every way I know possible. I thank her even for the storms and for the rains and for the difficulties. But, when you become attuned to it, that's a very, very important thing. I think if most people could even get that far, they would be so much further ahead.
But